How's everyone feeling out there tonight, this morning, this afternoon?
My handyman just said, I just sent him a really long message being like,
okay, 1%er. Very fitting for today's episode.
Listen, I have this handyman who I met because I was getting my kitchen remodeled, and the contractor that I hired or whatever, they have workers that like work for them, but they don't like work for the company necessarily.
Contractors actually aren't workers. Like, you think they're workers, but they're not. They're like a sourcer of workers. But the workers they source are not their workers. They're like a friend. And you're not really clear on what the financial dynamic is between them.
Right. So I walked in my kitchen while it was being remodeled one day, and my handyman said, God told me to talk to you. And I said, I'm all ears.
Immediately in. I fucking love when some random person says something like that to me.
Yeah. He was like, you're going to be asked to do like a lot of stuff with like, and he was right. Like, the contractor was like, oh, you need a guy to move the box behind your fridge over 2 feet, and it's going to cost $5,000. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And he was like, oh, I'm a lot cheaper than that. So he was like, I'll do it for you. And I was like, amazing. And ever since, he's been my go-to dude. Him and all of his friends. The things they were asking and charging were crazy. So I was like, I also think God wanted us to connect. So I sent him a really long thing being like, I need like a bunch of random stuff done, but I know you usually do big projects, so I don't want to waste your time. And he was like, I do anything for you. And I was like, thanks,
sir.
We love you. He's one of the family. He doesn't knock. He just walks in my home. But you know what? I'd give him a key.
I have a handyman, but he like has a hard time. Like, he needs a lot of supervision. Like, he's good, but like I think he's just struggling generally speaking, because I'll be like, can you come tomorrow at 10 a.m.? And he'll be like, yes. And then the next day at 10 a.m. he'll be like, I have to take my son to school. I'm sorry. And I'm
knew
like,
he wasn't going to be there.
I'm like, it's fine, but like, are you okay? And then like, I had him put together a trampoline, and I was like, make sure it's level. And he was like, how? And I was like, you could either like dig a little bit on one side or like put more dirt on one side. I don't really care if you dig up the yard, because I don't have grass. So like, I don't give a shit. And then I look out there, and he was trying to put sticks under one side. And I was like, don't do that. Like, he's fine. But like, I don't think I would trust him to move the refrigerator box 2 feet. I'm going to be honest. So I was looking at houses to buy one. A lot of them need a lot of work. What the fuck is wrong with you people? If I see one more millennial gray house, I'm going to kill myself. But anyway, I'm in this one house, and I was like, the tile in here looks a little weird. Like, it's just like wrong. Like, it was white, but like the texture was wrong. And we realized it had been painted over, and we found like a spot behind something where they had missed a spot. And it was like this dark turquoisey green tile from like the 50s. And I was like, why would you commit such a fucking crime? Why would you commit the crime of painting this with white acrylic paint? This gorgeous 1950s tile that someone could have styled and made work. So that's the number one crime that I'm the most upset about. The secondary crime that I didn't really give a shit about, but I'm not going to buy the house. There was a squatter living in one of them.
Oh my God.
For fucking
I
real.
lived in a house with a squatter.
Were they there? They weren't there, but it was very evident that they had been there.
Well, there was a second house. So they didn't quite go as far as to call it a renter. They were just letting me know that somebody lives in the other house on the property. It was like a house that someone had passed away in. My real estate agent and my husband were horrified. I was 30 weeks pregnant, and I was like, this is the vision. We're going to gut
I
this
love
shit.
it.
There was like
30 weeks pregnant, ready to gut the house with a squatter in the backyard.
It was the scariest place you've ever seen. Because it was like very religious.
But
it was
scary that like something happened there.
Something happened. And
like,
there was,
you felt the energy.
You walk in, and there was like oxygen tanks on the ground that had not been cleared out, but nothing was in the house except for like plaques with religious text and crosses. And then you go in the back, and this squatter had erected a tent that was 2 stories tall. And then there was the side building that appeared to be a garage that turned into not a garage when they began to live in it. And it was just filled, like you could see inside, with stuff to the top. And I'm like holding my baby belly, like, this is my vision. This is my home.
You were like, do you see the crown molding though?
Yeah, I was like,
you're like, if you look past
The character. They did not
And
see
that's
the
the
vision.
thing. The squatter house didn't have character. It was millennial gray. No, it was like very evident that like this person had figured out they could get in through like a back door or something like that, and that no one was living there. Because like there was like random stuff all over the house, and then there were like some men's clothes in one of the closets, but not in like an organized way, just like shoved in like the back corner of a closet. And there were like food wrappers around and like a lot of Black and Mild wrappers. And then there was like ground beef, just like the little, you know, you can buy it in like a roll. And I was like, it is only 40 degrees in the house, so this maybe is fine, like health safety wise. But if you're a squatter, I feel like the bare minimum is to put your trash in the trash can. Because there were
manners.
trash cans in the house. There wasn't furniture, but the water was on and there was trash cans. Because it's supposed to be open for showings, so people can go to the bathroom and stuff. And so there was just like random food wrappers all over the floor. And I was like, I wouldn't have tattled on you. I really wouldn't have. But like my agent's definitely going to tattle on you. But I felt like if you had been less obvious about it, no one would have been tattling on you. Like if you had your trash in the trash can, I probably wouldn't have thought anything about the random clothes.
Right. No, 100%. And I started laughing because when I moved into this house, I actually have never gone into our attic. Because when
Why
I
would
moved
you?
out, they had gone through a contentious divorce. And the husband had left all of his stuff in the home, including like his futon in the spare bedroom and all of his boots and shit. And like there was stuff in the attic. And I was just like, when you were talking about the squatter, I was like, kind of had one of those.
More of an emotional squatter than a literal one.
They were like, we had bought the house and they were like, okay, he needs to go get his stuff now. I guess it's time. And I was like, yeah, this is uncomfortable.
So he showed up while you were there?
No, I made sure that he did not. I still received some of his mail, but I won't go in the attic because for like a month I was like, Gilmar still lives here.
I am very anti-attic, but I brought a family member when I was looking at houses, and literally she went in the fucking attic. Like I hear this loud ass noise, so
God.
I come down the hallway because I was looking at a different part of the house, and she's pulling the attic stairs down.
Oh.
And I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, if you're gonna buy a house, they should be fine with you looking at the attic. And I was like, you are right.
None of my business. I saw Paranormal Activity too, and that's all I needed to know.
She was in that bitch iPhone light, like she was like, looks good. It looks good. And then we broke the stairs, but she fixed it. They wouldn't go back up. And like her and my agent were like shoving it back up. And that's actually, that house is pretty high on the list.
And you know what? I think this is a wonderful transition in our capitalistic conversation because now that you mention it, I do want to talk about the housing market as it relates to education because
Let's talk about it.
This is like my joker. Like I will never shut the fuck up about this. We've had like 3 episodes on standardized testing and I can't stop. Won't stop.
And one thing about the housing that actually came up when I was looking at houses, because my family member was asking me like, oh, how are the schools? And because we are looking like in like a 10-minute radius around where I live right now, but there's multiple different clusters. So like different houses are zoned for different schools, and the area I live in, the schools are kind of small and they have a lot of them. But anyway, and I was like, oh, that's not really a factor because all of them are like pretty bad elementary schools. Like it doesn't really impact the price because all of them are on like the government no-no list. So I was like, I don't really care about that. And she was telling me in her neighborhood, there's one street that goes to a different elementary school, and the houses on average are $200,000 more expensive in one cluster versus the other. $200,000?
Standardized testing scores have a direct impact on not only school ratings, but also the prices of houses. And research shows us that a 5% increase in test scores can correlate with a 2.5 increase in home prices in the corresponding school district. And if you're going to look at a website like Zillow, they have the great school rating on their website, and they prominently feature school ratings based on test scores. So, and then families with higher incomes are going to cluster in those areas with good schools, and then people like you and me are going to be in the schools that are all on the no-no list zone.
The government no-no list. The government kid cannot read, teacher bad. We come to your school now. That list. That's the one I'm on.
Yeah, and you read the great schools ratings, and it's like they're talking about like fist fights between adults.
Literally, you open the great schools, it's like all of the kids are poor and they cannot read. The classes are large and the teachers are stupid and inexperienced.
Exactly. And then rich white people see that and they're like, you know what? Actually, I gotta go. My Uber's here. And so this creates this economic segregation. So it just also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because these people go on to pay property tax to fund these schools and they're rich as fuck. And then they have expensive ass houses. So these schools are getting more money because they're funded by freaking property taxes.
And like, I've seen y'all's houses. I know that property tax must be kicking. Oh my God, this actually explains a lot because originally I was looking at houses right near my school and property tax was like $1. And then I decided to look at houses near where I live and they were like $4. Like it still wasn't high, but it was significantly higher. And I'm obviously joking about the $1 and $4. If anyone wants to know, it was like 500 versus like 3,000. So like a pretty significant difference.
It's horrible. And then like, so these schools that are on the government no-no list are a lot of the times facing funding cuts. And like you'll see in Georgia right now, they're saying, oh, these schools are performing poorly. Let's give the students vouchers so they can fucking leave. And
they're
it's
like, all right,
perfect.
School's doing bad. So parents, if you give a shit about your kid, let's get them on out of there. Let's
We're
make
not
sure
gonna give
this
you transportation to drive them over there, but we will give you a third of the private school tuition you need.
That's what I was about to say. I think I read it was like less than, it was like $6,000 or $7,000. What private school is only $6,000 a year? I would like that written down for personal reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in Georgia, I think I looked up that the average was at least double that. So the private school tuition isn't even remotely covered.
Maybe the tuition coverage was the friends we made along the way. And it's literally, can I just say, I have to say, I had this thought earlier when I was in the shower, actually. That voucher is not intended to cover private school tuition. It is intended to be a kiss on the forehead to appease the parents who already send their kids to private schools and secure their votes. Because if I got $6,500 taken off one of my major bills, might buy a little loyalty. I have critical thinking skills, so it doesn't. I would just say thank you for your money and fuck off. But if I didn't have critical thinking skills, I might be like, my government has made large impact on my life and I am better because of them. That would be if I was dumb. And so I can see why it works, because a lot of people are dumb because the public schools are a mess, which is why they want to send their kid to private school. Understandably so.
It's crazy, too, because then people will be in my comment sections like, oh, well, you're saying that parents don't have a right to send their kid wherever they want. And I'm like, you're not fucking listening. These
you can do whatever you want.
failing.
I don't give a fuck about your kid. I care about every kid except yours.
Yeah, I've started saying shit like that. People are like, why would you do this? I'm like, to piss you off personally. I hope it offended you deeply.
Here's your IP address.
Yeah. Oh my God. Somebody was getting on my ass the other day about Lucy Calkins. And so I don't know where I got posted on some fucking Facebook group. But these people that just are up this woman's asshole. They're in my comments defending her tooth and nail. And I literally responded to one of them yesterday. I was like, you teach in fucking Utah. 23% of your students are in poverty. You don't know anything. You don't know anything.
I have begun to spread the word about the capitalistic horrors caused by Lucy Calkins at my school. This is something that is not talked about in high schools. It is very rarely talked about. And I have been able to really spread awareness of her crimes and have gotten many more people to hate her, to the point that I know that my negative speaking about Lucy has permeated beyond my immediate friend group, because now other teachers who I don't really know have asked me about it. So I know that it is being I was going to say rumors, the truths and the honest slander I have been perpetuating is starting to permeate through the secondary teachers. And as soon as I take over my school, I will take the nation back from Lucy Calkins.
Fuck yeah. This is my legacy.
And then I will immediately resign and put Naomi O'Brien in charge, because I don't fucking know what to do. I'm gonna, I unlike Lucy Calkins, I can admit I don't know what I'm talking about. And I don't when it comes to early children's literacy.
God. Well, luckily, if you want to be like Lucy, you can just run your own fucking research projects and be like, look, I'm right. Don't look at who did that study.
You should be proud of me. Okay, how do I say this respectfully? A professional development company that I see as a very marketing heavy organization. I did engage in a training against my will of theirs, and I refused to be in their photos. They said, everyone circle up for a group photo, and I faked an emergency and left.
Correct.
If you want to exploit my face, it's going to cost you. And that's my new policy. If I like your PD, I'll be in your photo.
Well, yeah, your face is money for them.
I see them on Facebook every day of my goddamn life. So I was like, I'm not going to have my little ass smiling back at me when I'm on like the teacher snark page.
Right? No. My God, you're going to get eaten up. So, okay. Yes. So my whole thing with this test score bullshit is that we've seen over and over again that standardized tests are actually reflective of socioeconomic status. Like the poor kids don't do great, the rich kids do amazing. And then that additionally fucks the school system up. So it's like you're going to say schools with low test scores are going to have funding cuts and penalties and make it worse for who's already there. And then these testing companies profit directly because they're getting money from schools that can afford to buy their entire program and library of bullshit.
They're modules. It's always a modules. Modules, yes. Derogatory.
Mm-hmm. If you can buy our module, well, of course your module is going to be great because it goes directly with your test. And this has literally gone back forever because historic, like areas that are redlined, they have schools with lower standardized testing scores because they have fewer resources and they're underfunded.
And like, it's also it's like multiple self-fulfilling loops at the same time because like there's the one of like you cut the funding, which makes the test scores go down, and then when the test scores are down, you're at risk of getting funding cut, and that creates a circle. But the parents also creates a circle because like parents that are highly engaged in their students' education, really value education, really aware and have the ability to get their hands on this data and know how to interpret this data, those are naturally going to be the parents of higher achieving students because naturally when you have an adult involved in your education, you do better. I don't think I'm controversial by saying that. So then those are the parents that are going to be more likely to remove their kid from that school, which is going to make the levels go down even more, and then even more parents are going to. So it's like all these self-fulfilling loops making like a Venn diagram of doom.
Yeah, and the Venn diagram of doom is like reinforced by like a million other things that we're seeing, like school segregation feeds into this. Like discriminatory
have I ever told you
practices
about
in the workplace feeds into
how
this.
My high school was like segregated within my school. So I had been like, the high school I went to was pretty predominantly white. And I'm just like pulling these numbers out of my ass off like anecdotal evidence because it's very different now. But when I was there, I think I would have to say maybe like 75% white. But I always thought it was like closer to 100% white because I had pretty much all white kids in most of my classes. I could name like 2 or 3 black students that I had in my classes. And I had been on like the gifted AP track since middle school. And then later on into high school, I took some like regular ed level math classes because I just like wanted to get my credit and get out of there. And they were really diverse. And I realized that they were like, I don't want to say using like it was intentional. I don't know if it was intentional. Probably at some point it was. They were like kind of using the advanced and gifted classes as a way to segregate the school within one building because there were so many students of color that I had been going to school with for 8 years and had never had a single class with them and had never like crossed paths with them. And because I went to a relatively large school, like that was possible. And I don't know if it's still that way from what I've heard, because I know some people that work there. It's like improved somewhat, but not as much as it should probably. And I think it's like the same thing, like I said, like the parents that are like informed about those programs and in the know in the school or things like that. It just like creates these loops where it just keeps going and perpetrating the same problems.
That's exactly the vibe that's going on. And like the standardized testing companies are just reinforcing it. And they're
the ones giving the gifted and advanced test. Like they're the ones giving those like exams to be eligible for those courses.
Yes. So the standardized testing industry is worth literally billions of dollars. They can estimate that it generates around $1.7 billion annually. So, okay, back when we were dealing with No Child Left Behind, the Department of Education set aside $400 million to help states develop their own standardized tests. And because the Department of Education doesn't exactly spell out what you have to do, but they say you need to collect student data somehow. These big four standardized testing companies said, oh my God, I see dollar signs, baby. So it's Harcourt, CTP, McGraw-Hill, and Riverside Publishing, and Pearson. And Riverside Publishing is I've never said this word out loud. Houghton Mifflin? Houghton? You know, it's the word that you see in all of your textbooks. It's like Houghton.
I need to look it up.
You know what I mean?
Oh, Houghton? Houghton.
I've only read it in a book. But
it doesn't have text to speech. Where is it? I know exactly these people.
I don't respect them, though, so I don't care how to pronounce their fucking name. So...
Oh, these are the Go Math fuckers. I've cried on your pages many times.
Yes, exactly. So this is an old article. This is from the Bush era, but I think
I love that.
Yeah, but it's still we're still seeing these big four testing companies dominate the standardized testing space, and they are still they're probably worse than they were then, if I had to guess without even looking it up.
Generally speaking, companies didn't become more ethical between 2001 and 2025. Just my own anecdotal observation.
Mm-hmm. And Pearson got a decade-long deal with the U.S. Department of Education that made them $1 billion. A nonprofit, ETS, who is best known for the SAT, they generate annual revenues of over $1.3 billion.
I didn't know that. So I guess College Board hires them to do it?
Educational Testing Service, ETS, was founded in 1947, and they are the world's largest private educational testing and assessment organization. They develop the TOEFL, the TOEIC, the GRE, the Praxis. So they are registered as a nonprofit. And they were created by three other educational institutions: ACE, American Council on Education, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, which is relevant to what you're going to talk about when we talk about STEEL, and the College Entrance Examination Board. So this way predates the Department of Education, by the way, 30 years. And oh my God. ACE gave the new organization the Cooperative Test Service and the National Teachers Examination. Carnegie gave the GRE, and the College Board turned over to ETS the operation but not ownership of the SAT.
Interesting.
Why are you both coughing?
It's like Succession, but school.
Isn't it? It is. It's a huge industry, and the politics within it is crazy. So, and they also lobby a shit ton, which I know not all lobbying is bad. Totally, we all lobby for shit that we want in the government. Pearson spent over $1 million between 2010 and 2014 lobbying in the U.S.
Really, the only people I'm okay with having lobbyists work for them is doctors, anesthesiologists, teachers, nurses. If you have a real job, you can have a lobbyist.
And the College Board has a near monopoly on AP tests. Did you know that?
I thought they had a monopoly on AP tests.
They just said near monopoly. Maybe they can't legally say you have a monopoly.
I thought that was their whole shtick. And okay, so when I have my anti-capitalist helmet on, I'm fuck the College Board. But then when I have my teacher helmet on, I'm I do really appreciate all of the resources, the very clear pacing, the extensive practice questions, and the defending me.
But when we're looking at these high stakes tests, these testing companies are benefiting from these high stakes policies because they determine school funding and teacher evaluations and student progression, and they just exploit it.
So what I was trying to find that I finally found, and I remembered where it was in a stream that I did about the Gilded Age. I had been searching the word industry, so that's why I couldn't find it. So this is, I did like a long stream about like the late 1800s, early 1900s when the US was becoming really industrialized. And this is what I talked about with the creation of public schools. So business advisor to Rockefeller. If you don't know who Rockefeller is, he was like one of the richest men in American history. He created the Standard Oil Company. He did a lot to make our country like destroy the environment, but like I don't know if he knew that at the time, but he was a really ruthless businessman. He fucked over a ton of small businesses, made so much money. He really controlled like the president. He controlled Congress. Like it was really a lot of power that he had. Google it if you want to know more. So business advisor to Rockefeller, Frederick T. Gates, was a prominent member of the General Education Board, which, like I think you already mentioned, Carnegie and Rockefeller donated a lot of money to the General Education Board, which was like the early days of public schools before it was like Department of Education all standardized. This is what Frederick T. Gates said. We shall not try and make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise them up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for the embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have ample supply. And there are reports that Rockefeller and Carnegie played a very significant role in creating the agenda for public schools and what was taught in public schools. And one thing that I'm pretty sure I have it written down somewhere, I thought it was in here, but I'll look, that's part of why we use the bell system, because long before the bell system was used in schools, it was used in factories to signify shift change. And that part of the reason these industrialists wanted public schools is because, like, I'm saying this not as me, but this is what Rockefeller believed. They're like, we have all these dumb, drunk idiots that come to work and they don't have any respect for authority. They don't listen to the bells. They're late. And then like this is some lore. I don't know if everyone can handle this, but I think you can, so I'll say it. So like a lot of men of that time thought it was like kind of gay to listen to your boss. Like it was like, oh, a man is going to tell me, a man, what to do. So they like didn't respect their manager. So that's part of why they wanted school to like create obedient people, because people had a lot more like tenacity, I guess, and like sassiness and like not wanting to follow directions. But keep in mind, the directions were work with these very dangerous machines for 18 hours straight and $1. So I'm not on the side of the owners, but they realized like you have to do like long-term social psychology to get people to sit still and listen to bells.
It is really crazy how since the very beginning of the education system, it has always been structured with the capitalistic society in mind.
Yeah.
Like it's always been made to serve the people in power. It's always been about like what kids can do for the system. And somebody the other day said a lot of times people talk about protecting children, they're talking about them as an asset, not as like a person. And that really hit.
That's the best way to describe it. Oh, literally tattoo that on my neck right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm getting so mad all the time, because when I'm talking about kids in meetings, I'm talking about them as people, and other people are okay. Wow. All right. Someone should have told me that a couple years ago. Maybe would have made some different choices, but it's fine, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it just like blew my mind.
Another rough Rockefeller quote I just found. I can't vet this, but a bunch of people are saying it online. That's what I'll say. I'm seeing it in a bunch of spots. I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers.
Well, folks, there you have it. Thanks for coming to Teacher Quit Talk.
And that is the man that gave the money to found our public schools. So as Fraz and the other engineers in the California land would say, it is not a bug, it's a feature. They said, like, if Rockefeller, if we could raise him from the grave and he could see a 5-year-old doing iReady, he would be like, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. That's exactly what they should be doing. And literally having a 5-year-old do iReady is the 2025 version of us getting them ready to work in factories. We're getting them ready to sit on a little laptop and do nothing.
Yes. The critical thinking skills that we need are not being taught by these like rote programs. And I understand that technological literacy is very important in our day and age, but that is not the point of these mindless testing companies programs.
I'll say it, when you have a touch screen and it's multiple choice, I don't think that's building technological literacy. With all the love in the world, they have trained animals in labs to do that.
Yeah, and frankly, what it does teach is testing skills.
Oh, in my district, we call it testing stamina now.
Because it's long or what?
Yeah. So now we have to give them tests more often to build their stamina because they noticed they were going to sleep during the multi-hour long government mandated test. So they said, oh, surely that's your fault. You simply did not exercise the children enough.
I'm sick.
So we do a lot of stamina building exercises. What I took that as is permission to make them do push-ups. If you want to build stamina, you don't have to say it twice. I'll do it.
There's so much we could get into with this whole capitalistic society education crossover thing. We haven't even talked about the exploitation of teachers and commodification of students and families. And
we should do on our next part of this episode, one thing that I want to talk about that I am part of the problem is that like we exploit teachers on two ends. Like the school system exploits them as like a workforce in an employee way, and then the companies also exploit them as customers and financially, because that's one thing that I have learned recently. Like my school will like use money to get technology platforms just for our school. So like you don't log in through the district one, but like all the teachers have a login. So like that's how we have Nearpod. So I've been learning about like the sales process of these companies, and some of them advertise to teachers and some do not. And honestly, I have a bone to pick with the ones advertising to teachers because you're expecting them to like subsidize it. So we should talk about those and make like a good list and a bad list.
You know what? I'd love to also talk about substitute teaching companies that do that. These companies are advertising things like substitute teaching as a full-time opportunity, but they're not providing things like job security or benefits. So
it's the benefits for me.
Yeah. So it's like, who is that really serving? Because it's not the teachers that you're advertising to.
Just as a general rule of thumb, if you have to confirm your work location via an app in the morning, it's probably not a full-time job, legally speaking. You might be working full-time hours. But if you have to like log in and like see what's available for the day, like a sub, an Uber, an Instacart, anything of that nature, generally most full-time employment, you kind of have a knowledge of where you're going to be each day, and it's not like a in-the-moment spur. Do you work today?
Right. And I think that just in general, full-time, part-time, whatever you are, I feel like teachers are really treated as expendable labor.
That's the crazy thing is like... So sometimes a company will treat their employee, or an organization, I should say, an organization will treat their employee as expendable labor, but then it's like a game of chicken, and eventually they'll be like, oh, fuck, you're not expendable labor. Like, I'll give an example of like someone who is like a coder or like a developer for like a software company. They might treat them like they're replaceable, but then like when they really go to the mat, the company is like, oh, fuck, it will take 3 months to replace you. And I think that's because the company is going to have genuine problems that affect their profits if that person is gone. And in schools, districts can really just like not deal with the consequences because they're not in the building. So like when I was treated like I was expendable and then I quit because I felt expendable at my last position, they said we got out, because I offered when I quit at my old school, I quit in February. I said I'll record videos of me teaching the stuff for the rest of the year and like put it on Google Classroom, so like the curriculum's all there, and like I'll add someone as a collaborator. Like I'm happy to do that for you guys. Principal's exact words were, we can take care of our own kids because you quit, just go. Cool.
I hate him.
So I didn't do it. And then I found out that the kids were just sitting alone in the room every single day, and the scores on the EOC like plummeted that year. So I'm like, the district was able to treat me as expendable and the administrators were able to treat me as expendable, and then the consequences were faced by the other teachers on my hallway, not the people that are actually making those decisions, because like there's not a profit margin in the literal sense. Like, they can just act like teachers are expendable when they're really, really, really fucking not.
No, they are absolutely not. And we're seeing that, but it's not being addressed. And it's very frustrating.
Well, we're sorry that you have to live under capitalism, but we do too. So we're going to talk more about it next week, kind of get into more of the employment side like we touched on a little bit. Thank you for being here. If you want to quit, we support you. And if you don't want to quit, good for you, man.
Good for you. We support you. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Just as a disclaimer, because I am someone who is actively teaching, everything on this podcast is my personal opinion and does not reflect my district, my state, my employer, my students, or my admin. Everything on this podcast was recorded on personal time, on personal equipment, and is a completely separate endeavor from my school district.
Yeah, leave her alone.